You're listening to 99.1 WQRT LP, and welcome to Radio Free Book Club for December 2022. I'm Ken Honeywell. I'm a writer and reader from Indianapolis, and today we'll be discussing one of the best-reviewed novels of 2022, Gabrielle Zevin's Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, with the commas in there. It's the story of three friends and how their relationships change over time, how their relationships affect their work, and vice versa. I saw Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow just made Laura Miller's list of 10 best books of the year in Slate. I'm sure it's probably not the last top 10 list we'll see it on. But we, the members of Radio Free Book Club, have been known to have a contrarian streak. So let's see what we think. But first, let's see who we are. We're lucky to have two new book club members with us this month and one returning stalwart who actually selected this month's book. Let's do some introductions. Traci, the aforementioned stalwart, let's start with you.
Traci Cumbay here, writer and hiker, and in 2 weeks, mother of a high school graduate.
Oh my gosh.
How awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, no kidding. Ashley, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here.
I'm Ashley C. Ford. I am an author and interviewer, podcast host, and I have a chocolate lab named Astro Renegade Ford Stacy. He's never graduated from anything, but he is very cute.
Yeah. And wow, what a moving and courageous memoir you wrote.
Thank you.
It's really beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And Robin Beery.
I am a former bookseller, writer, and in about 8 months, I will hopefully have a Master of Social Work degree and become a person in quest of a therapist license.
Yeah. Awesome. I'm sure you will get that. I feel, kind of underqualified to be in this room all of a sudden. Well, thanks, everybody. And just one more note before we get started. Here at Radio Free Book Club, unlike some of the other book clubs I've been a part of, we actually read the book and we talk about it. And there will definitely be spoilers. So if Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow is on your Christmas list, you might want to check back with us after you finish it. You can find this in all the episodes of Radio Free Podcast on Mixcloud, Spotify, Apple, just about anywhere you stream podcasts. So let's get started. Traci, this was your choice. What attracted you to the book? And maybe you could give us a little bit of a setup about it.
Oh, geez. Well, it's a beautiful cover. I'm very superficial that way. And I was bent on choosing a book by a woman author. So tick that box. And the premise is lovely. These two kids meet in a children's hospital where one is recovering from a really severe car accident and the other is there for her sister, and strike up a friendship that lasts ages, decades. It's beautiful and form a really intense work collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe worth saying at the front, too, that their relationship in the hospital starts off early on a little bit unbalanced in that Sadie, whose sister is in the hospital, ends up kind of, without really meaning to, in a situation where she's visiting with Sam, the other main character who's there, who is in the hospital, but she is also garnering volunteer credit that he is unaware that she's getting. And that's kind of becomes like the first kind of rift in their relationship.
In a way, she's using him. I mean, she didn't mean to, but it certainly could be interpreted that way. And she's also the healthy one. So it's unequal in a couple of ways.
Yeah.
Well, and he was so upset that that they didn't talk for years.
Years and years and years. One of the things that I love about that first rift in their friendship is that I felt like it so accurately showed how both of them are isolationist when it comes to pain. Like that is their reaction to any kind of pain, is to isolate really hard until they feel like they've regained a certain amount of control, whether that be by time, circumstance, or revenge in, whatever case that may be. But yeah, I like that their characters from the beginning, you see that what they share is not just affinity for the same ways of entertainment and passing the time. They also share a reactionary response. I think they both share a need for control from the beginning, and I like it.
Yeah, very interesting. So the milieu of this book is the gaming industry, right? The gaming world. Back when computer games were really starting to get sophisticated, back in the mid-late 90s, is when this is all set. Any gamers in the room? Anyone consider themselves a gamer?
Not even a little.
No?
No.
I never considered myself a gamer. So I started playing video games way, back in the beginning, the Pac-Man, Donkey Kong era for sure. I'm probably about 5 years older, I think, than these characters, or maybe 3 years older. So I'm not even sure I don't know that gamer was a thing back then.
Right.
The idea that you would devote your life to this, certainly, that would have horrified my parents, who were always trying to drag us away from them.
Yeah. I think you're right, Robin. I don't think I ever would have considered myself a gamer, but as I reflected on this, like when I was at Butler, I remember I was there when the C Club went from pinball machines to the first generation of arcade games. And I played arcade games a lot. And even some computer games. I never played Oregon Trail. Anyone ever play Oregon Trail?
I actually loved Oregon Trail
Did ya?
so much that when I was in college, I had a laptop. It had broken. We couldn't afford to replace the laptop. We couldn't really afford to get me the laptop in the first place. And luckily, my roommate was dating a guy who was on the Geek Squad at Best Buy, and he was like, I have so many computer parts and pieces. I can put a computer together for you. And I was like, great. And he put together like a desktop computer for me that I could just like keep in my office. I couldn't take to classes or whatever, but whatever. I have a computer now. And the first thing I did as soon as I had like the tiniest bit of money to spare was go on eBay and find an old Oregon Trail CD-ROM. And uploaded it to this older desktop computer so that I could play it all the time.
Yeah.
I would not consider myself a gamer by any means, but I have had games that I got obsessed with over the course of my life. And when I was a kid, it was on Sega. It was Columns, and which was like, the Sega version of Tetris.
My favorite.
I loved, and I still to this day can't really get into Tetris because of what it does to me. I get like obsessed.
Yeah.
So
right.
It's like I would play that, and I would play Pac-Man, Mrs. Pac-Man. I'm really very much into those. And then there was like a game there was like a Richard Scarry game that me and my brother used to play when we were kids. The Busy World of Richard Scarry. Loved that game.
Yeah.
But I'm so behind on games. Like if you hand me a controller now, I only know how to use the Xbox to get to Netflix. I don't know how to use it to actually play games anymore. Though that might be changing a little bit after I read the book, maybe.
Yeah, I always loved, as far as computer games went, I always liked puzzle games, like Lemmings. I could not get enough of Lemmings. And some of those old games that they mentioned in here, like Duke Nukem and Wolfenstein and those kinds of things that were essentially kind of puzzle games with real, like, low-res graphics in the beginning. Once it crossed a line for me into stuff that looked good and you had multiple buttons on the controllers, I was out of all of that stuff. Yeah, and I was, Oregon Trail was like a kid's game when I was an adult, so I never did anything like that. So, Traci,
Ken,
what did you love about this book? What worked for you?
Well, since we're on the game aspect of it, I will say that she does a brilliant job of giving you enough information to feel like you are in the hands of an expert, but not excluding you if video games are not your realm. Mm-hmm. That was wonderful. What did I love about it? I had the beautiful experience of wanting to just stop my whole life to read it. I mean, that's profound when you run into that. And it's the relationship. And of course, like as Ashley mentioned, they both have this same isolationist tendency and the frustration of that. Oh my God, guys, I wanted to scream at them. So that kept me in because I wanted to know. And then there's this very charming Mark's character, who is just the most beautiful contrast to these two really difficult people, difficult artists, I think. So just watching them grow and develop, it was delightful. And the writing is gorgeous.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I loved just like some of the foreshadowing that I found really, really great. Like the when Sadie was dating Ace Rocket. And she went to his house and he was like obsessed with 45s and A-sides and B-sides. And of course, it was, right when they were developing both sides. Mm-hmm. And, that little bit about how sometimes the B-side was so much better than the A-side. And of course, that happened with both sides, right? The critics really loved her like mystical, I forget what it was called. But all the people loved Sam's side.
Yeah.
Yeah, the more realistic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. And also, for those of us in the room who have been copywriters, I love the list of names, alternate names for love doppelgangers.
Oh, God, yeah. I flash back to name storming sessions big time.
Yeah. No kidding. Robin, what do you think? How'd you like the book overall?
I loved it. I mean, again, to go into the writing again, I was blown away by how well she managed the tone and the voice of the book, because not every section, but most sections actually sort of begin again to do something kind of unique with the voice. And it never felt jarring or gimmicky in a way that I think some writers might have fallen into. And the other thing too, I mean, just throughout the book, she does this thing where she's basically kind of an omniscient narrator, but sometimes she'll take on almost the persona of a historian, talking about these people as if they're figures in gaming history that we should just know.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of seamlessly works.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, Ashley?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I voted for it for Book of the Year, for Book of the Month, because I'm definitely on that app. I mean, I loved this book, and I think a big part of the reason why I loved it is the same as what Robin is saying. There is a command of voice, and there is that command of pacing, where even though so much happens in this book, I mean, this book is the story of three people's friendship over the course of multiple decades. It's talking about games. It's talking about their inner worlds, their interactions, how the world reacts to them. Like, so much is happening, and at no point did I truly feel lost. And I feel like that's really hard to do with a book like this, where you are coming in and a lot of people, not everybody is a gamer. Not everybody understands these industries, understands what games are even capable of. Mm-hmm. And depending on how much you know, what's interesting to me is depending on how much you know, like, this book might feel very prescient, like relevant right now, or it might read like sci-fi of the future. Like, oh my gosh, like what if there were games like this? But then there's somebody else going, no, there are games that are like this. Yeah. Like, you could play these now. Yeah. And I love that sense of, even though, yes, she has that command of the language and the tone and the pacing, there's still a sense of timelessness in the book where I feel like, yeah, it doesn't feel like it necessarily could have existed in like the age of my grandmother, but it does feel like for some reason it could have existed anytime beyond then and could exist anytime beyond now.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, Traci, when last we met on this show, we were talking about Tracy Flick Can't Win, and both really not liking it. And I think the interesting thing about this book is it is very plot heavy. I mean, this is a very plot heavy book, but it is also a really great character study. I mean, I think she's done a really great job of writing a pretty literary novel that is really plot driven, unlike Tracy Flick Can't Win, which we both were really disappointed in.
Agreed.
So I don't know if anyone else has read that, but we kind of bagged on it a couple of shows ago.
Tom and I share an agent, so let me not say too much.
Yeah, you don't have to say a thing. Totally understand.
I loved The Leftovers, the novel.
Yeah.
Yes.
So did I.
Me too.
And I think it was interesting. I was just reviewing our conversation about that today. And what we didn't like was that so much of Tom Perrotta's work is funny, and Tracy Flick Can't Win just wasn't funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was disappointing to us in that way anyway.
I'm trying not to say anything.
Yeah,
I'm not going to start over on that.
Yeah. Let's not say anything there.
Let's segue. This book was also very funny.
It was very funny. Yeah.
Funny. The characters were funny, and frequently the things they did and said made me laugh. But also the writing is just so clever, and I'm a big fan of clever writing. I feel like there are some like really well hidden puns in there too. I can't point to any right now, but if you're a fan of just great writing and a little bit of wordplay, there's that buried in there too.
Do you feel like the characters are funny or like the narrator is funny?
Well, yeah, the narrator is funny. Mm-hmm. The characters are funny because I think of that Flannery O'Connor aspect of like, what is it? They asked her like how people will do or something like that. That's why the characters are funny, because they act like people that you might know, I think.
I feel that.
Yeah, well, let's talk more about the characters. What, we had kind of a love triangle going, right? Did we, were we rooting for Sam and Sadie to get together? Were we happy that Sadie and Marks got together? What did we think about those relationships?
No, I never thought Sam and Sadie should get together.
Me either.
Not, as they had something different and something profound that wasn't romance. And it almost seemed incongruous to me that Sam was maybe pining for her sometimes.
Right.
It just didn't feel like that's what they should really be about. I don't know if I was if I was buying her interest in Marks, actually. That seemed a tough one to swallow, although they did develop in a way that I thought made sense. But I'll tell you, I had a problem with Marks overall, really. He's just perfect. Like, what's his flaw? His only flaw is he loves too many women.
I think that Marx's flaw, I don't. Okay, so I was thinking about this a lot, and earlier when I was talking about how Sam and Sadie have these things with like control, right? The thing about both of their relationships with control is that they are through life experience or through conditioning, they naturally have like these obstacles now to being able to fully ever believe that they're actually in full control. Like Sam knows that he has a disability. Sam knows that while he has maybe more gregarious personality, he also doesn't necessarily have like the bank account or like that kind of safety net that Sadie has. Sadie likes control, and, you know, for the most part, she's gotten some of those obstacles out of her way. She doesn't have a disability. You know, she has money, but she also grew up the sister of someone who was ill and probably had more attention on them, something that she couldn't control. She could make her sister comfortable. She could be patient with her sister. She could be compassionate, but she could not fix it. She couldn't make it go away. So she knows for sure that there is a certain amount of control she doesn't have. I think Marks never really had the big obstacle until that pivotal moment that showed him that he was not in control. And so he consistently operated like someone who absolutely knew the best thing for everyone. And he kept being right, you know, in a lot of circumstances. Yeah. And it's like that works for everybody else. But where's the lesson for Marks? Where's the moment where Marks realizes I am not in control and is able to develop a little more, I don't know, self-preservation?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, when you said that, a light bulb went on for me, because you're right. I mean, I think Marx thinks that Macbeth's speech at the end of Macbeth, the tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow speech that the book is titled after, is about like getting infinite chances, like in a video game, when like he's an actor, so he knows the play, and it's, to me, so clearly about like you only get one shot. And you know, the other thing is, Macbeth is this guy who's throughout the entire play is just trying to outrun fate, that the prediction that the weird sisters give him at the beginning of the play, and gets, you know, foisted at every turn. And so for Marx to say that the play is about, you know, infinite chances does, I think, show his innocence in that regard. I don't know if that's, you know, again, I liked him for that, though, so I don't know that.
He's a delightful character.
Right.
I mean, he's just like happy-go-lucky. He's making things happen. He's supporting his friends. He's savoring every moment. How could you not love him?
He brings something out in you, though, the part of you that goes, you got to be smarter than that, or you got to do better than that. I think he brings, even for me, a little bit of like I'm going to be honest, like you sit back and you read a character like that and you're like, only a white man gets to live that life.
Although he was part Asian, wasn't he?
Right, yes. But it's also like, it's like only a straight dude of a certain persuasion, you know, and of a certain kind of societal acceptance gets to go that long without having like reality smash him in the face and tell him no.
You know, Traci, I don't know why I had this reaction, but the combination of the saintliness of Marx and the injury of Sam made me think about A Little Life, which was a book that I hated. but I didn't hate this. And I know you loved A Little Life, and I don't know how the rest of you felt about it.
Loved it.
Did you?
I loved it.
It's yeah. You got to come down one way or the other on it, I think.
I think you do.
Yeah.
And I think that's also, I think like this book, in my opinion, A Little Life is one of those where it greatly depends on whether or not you feel like the violence inflicted upon the characters is earned. And it also depends on whether or not you feel like these people like could exist, because this book is like written as if like they could. And I read a book like that and I'm like, yeah, for sure those people could exist. And for sure this violence is earned. But I think that there are people with different life experience who look at it and are like, nah. And I think that could easily happen with this book as well.
Yeah. I think it could. It didn't happen for me. I mean, I really, I thought it was really kind of propulsive. I thought it was very hard to put down. So, Robin, you mentioned Macbeth. I mean, the other kind of big literary inclusion was Emily Dickinson. Emily Blaster was quite an interesting little game. But, you know, also the poem that Love Is All There Is played a big part. Do you have any reflection on that, about the freight, whether the freight is proportioned to the groove?
To confess, I had to kind of translate the Emily Dickinson into a Beatles lyric in my head in order to maybe get my head around it. I was thinking, is that sort of like, and in the end, the love we take is equal to the love we make? But yeah, I don't know. Beyond that, I mean, I think they're both intriguing ideas, but I'm not sure, you know, as far as the book goes, whether that was a big theme for me or not.
Yeah. Anybody else have a reflection on that?
No, I got nothing. I really want to talk about Dove.
Yeah, let's talk about him. What do we think about him?
He's awful. He is helpful sometimes, but also completely terrible and inappropriate and abusive. And given that our girl is seeking control constantly, it is interesting that she gives herself over so completely to someone who sure didn't deserve it.
Yeah, I can only agree. He was a terrible person who she continued to have a strong, like, friend mentor relationship with.
But I think she, at least, you know, she surpasses him, I think, in almost every way. Such that the relationship that starts out very one-sided and he sort of has most of the power, I felt like by the end, she knew way more than he did.
Yeah.
In many ways. Yeah. About game design and about life, too.
Yeah, agree. So speaking of things that are potentially abusive and creepy, how about Pioneers? Ashley, what do you think about Pioneers? Was that creepy or was that okay?
I'm gonna be honest, I see why Sam wouldn't think it was creepy. And I see why Sadie would. Absolutely. I think that, oh my gosh, all of the men in this book, though I loved the book and really liked it and liked different parts of the characters at different times, I felt like it's not like Sadie doesn't have her own stuff going on, but it's like the men in the book are just really getting on my nerves. And part of it is because of, I'm trying to think of how to say this. I guess a big part of it is just because these characters display a naivety that gives like the whiff of like a lack of imagination about what anybody else's life experience might be like. And I think Sam, especially in that moment, the way he decided to go about gifting her, I guess, the game, it just felt like it wasn't about her. It felt like when you tell a guy, when you're dating, maybe you're dating a rich guy, right? Like a billionaire guy, you're a lady, and you tell him about like your dreams of living on like a little farm somewhere with a cottage and maybe like a couple sheep and some goats and stuff. And what he does is build like a mega farm, a megaplex for you. And there's actually a barn full of horses and actually your farm is going to produce so much that's going to go into a bank account just for you that one day you'll have as much money as me. And it's like, you took my dream and turned it into something that was not about me, really. You took something, an intimate knowledge of me, and turned it into a monument of how you feel about me, not me. And I kind of feel like that's what was happening in that moment. And I feel like Sadie would have very easily understood that, even if she could not articulate it at the time. And I kind of think Sam just would have not understood it at all and chalked it up to like, you know, oh, well, maybe she's just not ready to accept how cool this is.
Yeah.
Maybe she's not ready to accept how good I'm being to her in this moment.
But I will say, I don't think it was the best way to go about getting back in contact with her. But she was being so friggin' Sadie. She was unreachable.
Yep.
And that was also the language that they spoke to each other. And you might remember when she owed him an apology early on, she wrote it in code.
Right.
She did.
Yeah. So to me, there was a little element of intimacy in that.
And ultimately, she died of dysentery, which was really good.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I think intimacy is a good word to bring up in regard to this, because I think he does presume, you're absolutely right, that like she's not reachable and she needs him to reach her because otherwise she won't be okay. That like his presumption is in presuming that like he's the one who has to help her. But like, is that a presumption that is more okay for someone to make if you have like a long friendship? And I do think like in a lifelong friendship, maybe, I mean, it could, you know, she still has every right to be pissed at him. I'm sorry, angry at him.
I think you can say that word.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
2022. What a world.
So speaking of Sadie being all Sadie, I think the one thing that kind of bugged me the most maybe was her reaction to figuring out that Sam had known about the engine that they used to build Ichigo and kind of manipulated her. I just felt like that was such an overreaction. That seemed like a weird reaction on my part. Anyone think about that?
Yes, I also, because she didn't know that that's what happened. And also, did we even need that?
Well, we needed some reason for her to want to distance herself from Sam, right?
Yeah,
And that seemed like a kind of a weak argument. But yeah.
I think there wasn't enough setup to really show like insecurity that she was feeling at that moment that could have fueled that overreaction. And so, yeah, I agree that it did end up coming off like, okay, girl, like, I don't know if it's that deep, but you do you, I guess, you know, set your boundaries. But at the same time, it's also like, that is a moment in the book that did not feel earned.
Agreed.
It felt like I can come up with reasons in my head why she might feel that way, you know, or maybe like put some stuff together and be like, maybe this indicates, but it didn't feel clear.
Yeah. I think, you know, maybe she had enough, the author had enough with, you know, the rift that I think was kind of opening between the two of them over how the games were received and whether Sadie was getting credit from the press, which she wasn't, which was really unfair, and whether he cared enough or was doing enough about it. But then, you know, to add that on, I wonder if that was something that, you know, people were like, maybe there should be something else here that drives them apart. Like, it did feel a little after the fact.
Yeah. So going back to Sam a little bit, so at the start of the story, Sam can't see the magic eye. At the end, he can see the magic eye. Is that symbolic of something that he couldn't see at the beginning that he could see at the end? Don't all talk at once.
I've thought about this question and I don't quite know what to make of that, or if I should make anything of it.
Yeah, I don't know. Was he just accepting of his relationship with Sadie at the end in a way he wasn't at the beginning?
For some reason, I feel like the magic eye has more to do with being able to look back at yourself than anything else. I think like it's almost like in my mind, the rest of the book, he was always looking out. He was always looking for something out to validate, to satisfy, to heal, to save, like whatever. It's just out what's out there. And even when he isolated into games and things like that, like something that took him out of himself. And I think that there was some acceptance of the need to look inward, the need to see oneself, one's life, one's potential outside of how others do or without the validation of someone else. Yeah, because, after his mom died, like Sadie is kind of the woman in his life.
Yeah, right.
For that amount of time. And when our mothers are the world, when we're young, especially when we're babies, they're the whole world.
Well, and especially someone who doesn't have a father present.
Yes. And I think that I think that he sort of, in my mind, like he reclaimed like the ability to kind of mother himself. And not specifically need Sadie or her love in that way anymore. He didn't need her to choose him. He saw that she was there because she was there.
I'm sold. I buy that.
Yeah.
What I wanted to know was, did he find the secret highways that crisscross the Los Angeles area?
We never found out, did we?
Not that I could find.
No. Yeah, I hope they're there. So let's talk about the death scene. Yeah. Who wants to go first?
Fortunately and unfortunately, I thought it was done beautifully.
Yeah.
I thought it was gorgeous. And that is rough to do. I don't know how you write a gorgeous death scene. Like, I'm sure I've read them at other points in my life. But for some reason, this one just struck me as particularly like, whoa.
I have goosebumps now thinking about it.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. And it was really kind of the first interior we get of Marx. He's, he is certainly an important character in the book, but he hasn't really been a viewpoint character up to this point. And yeah, I just thought it was just gorgeous and kind of scary to imagine lying in a hospital bed and being, like completely in your head and ultimately, knowing you are going to die without being able to communicate that with everyone around you. Really moving and a little bit scary, I thought.
Yeah.
It was profound.
Yeah. Being entirely from his point of view, I think. I'm struggling to think of another death scene like that. I'm sure there are some, but
maybe Jude's in A Little Life.
I haven't read it.
I mean, I don't know. Jude's in A Little Life for me felt just, to me, it was beautiful when he talked about math. Those were some of my favorite parts of the book when he, discussed like why he loved numbers, why he loved math, like some of the descriptions of the city, the imaginary New York City that him and his friends live inside of. It's wild, but I would not say that the death of Jude would come close to this section when in a death scene.
Yeah. Yeah, my favorite part of that book was closing that cover.
Why'd you do that?
Well, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
I think that's why I never read it.
Because of me?
Yeah, I was
right.
contemplating it, and you were ranting, I guess is a better word.
Yeah.
I loved it so much that a friend of mine, who worked at the New York Times. I went there to have lunch with her, and she was like, "Oh, Hanya's office is over here. Let's go say hi to Hanya." And I was like freaking out, but I was also like, I have to do this. So I go over there and talk to Hanya, and we're having a really good professional conversation. I'm feeling like I look pretty smart, like I'm pulling it off.
Right.
I'm pulling it off. It's like, get out of here, you're pulling it off. And I just can't help myself. And the last thing I say to her is, Can I tell you which Hogwarts houses I put the characters into? And she looks at me, and I thought for a second she was just going to be like, get out. And she wasn't. She was like, absolutely.
Awesome.
And so then we just talked about it for a bit.
That's awesome.
It was great.
So, Sam, the whole tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, as we talked about, the way the characters in this book interpreted that was you always get to have another life in video games. How much of the allure of gaming do you think that is? Not just for Sam, who had a body who he couldn't manipulate the way he wanted to, but how much of the allure of gaming in general is that, do you think? To always have another chance.
I think it's huge. I mean, you get to, I think for him especially, because he was limited physically in that way, but, for everyone, I think it's just about getting to be someone else and getting to have powers that you don't have in real life. You get to be a dragon flying around, breathing fire, or,
I felt that in this book. I think as a non-gamer, it's really hard to even posit, but when the way that the author is talking about the games and the way that the characters talk about the games, it definitely felt like that those infinite lives were part of the appeal.
Not to mention the fantasy of the clear goal.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
What a fantasy that at any given point, not only that you get more tries over and over and over. I keep thinking about me and my brother were obsessed with beating Mrs. Pac-Man as a kid. And we would just sit there and it would be like, all right, next time, go the next, strategizing, but going over and over and over. And part of what felt so good when playing the game was just knowing what you were supposed to do, knowing that there might be a million ways to accomplish it, but you always have a really very clear goal.
Usually, although I think like one of the things that Sadie as a game designer plays with in this book is playing against that idea of whether you have a clear idea of what you're doing or not. Like I think about that early game that she did in class, Solution, where I was about to say I'm not going to spoil it, but I can spoil it because you've all read the book if you're listening to this. So she, has a game where you're working in a factory and you think you're just making widgets, but in fact you're assembling machines for the Holocaust, which is,
which is a weird goal.
A weird goal.
Unappealing goal,
a weird
you might
game.
say.
And, you can understand why some of the people that played the game, her classmates, were upset.
Yeah, which is what makes the game interesting.
Yeah, right.
But that's also, I think, what subverts the idea that most people have about games, which is that, there's a clear goal.
Yeah.
And they want that, and they get mad when they don't have it.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings me to the difference in the two characters' idea of greatness. For Sam, greatness means popular. For Sadie, greatness means art. Love to know what you all think about that. And also love to know what you think about how this book stacks up in relation to those two things.
Ooh, that's a big question.
Yeah, I know.
Huge question.
Yeah.
I've never thought that they were mutually exclusive. I think their goals are different, I think. Art to me is about, Actually, I think art to me is more about play. Actually, it's like you're playing with the person that's viewing the art or participating in it, or you're having a conversation with them. It's you're trying to put something out there that people will respond to, or that you don't know how people will respond to. And that's part of the process too. Whereas, clearly popularity doesn't care about any of that. And sometimes popularity just happens without you meaning it.
Right. It was interesting that their most popular game was one that they didn't make.
Yeah.
The other kids who came to their company had the giant hit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love doppelgangers.
Love doppelgangers.
Great title.
So many great options instead as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that I thought they were great characters to have, like to go back and forth between throughout the story. Absolutely, but I'm also on team art and popularity aren't mutually exclusive, and it's sort of a lack of imagination, I think, that makes us think that. And I kind of almost feel like that might have been the flaw between them the whole time, like not just in terms of like the points in the narrative, but also like the flaw in their connection that allowed it to be human and real and complex. Was the fact that they both, I think, tended to be a little too essentialist on the side that they leaned into. And I think that while they were really good at being imaginative about games and the parameters they had around that, they weren't fantastic about being imaginative about what their company could be in terms of structure, in terms of marketing, in terms of branding, in terms of how they dealt with the media. And that was ultimately the flaw. I think that sort of like killed their working relationship to a certain extent, where they have to keep coming back to each other. But I also like that they have to keep coming back to each other. It's like a game.
Yeah, right.
It's like a game. They keep getting do-overs. They keep getting restarts. They keep getting a new life, But the beautiful thing about that, I guess, is that it's real life. And so they're choosing it.
Yeah.
Making the same mistakes over and over.
Over and over again.
Right.
God.
Right.
Very human.
Right. But getting another life every time.
Life.
Not very human. So what do y'all think? Anything not work for you particularly in the book? Anything that just kind of took you out of the story?
It's a huge pet peeve of mine when a woman realizes she's pregnant because she throws up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of a telltale sign, isn't it?
And it also doesn't happen to everybody.
Right.
Yeah. There's a lot wrong with that.
So it's like there's a lot going on there, but it's what people recognize.
It's a shortcut. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a shortcut, and it's kind of not the point. So I can see maybe why the author would take shortcuts there. Maybe.
Yeah.
That's my only complaint. I just really think this is a great piece of literature.
Yeah, without it in any way, watering down my rave review, because I loved it. Honestly, I think this was the best book I've read all year. And, I could see this being one of the top books of this decade, to be honest, because it's just really good. It's really unique. They say on the jacket, is this the great American gaming novel? And I think that'll, it'll at least be in the running for that.
For sure.
But that said, there were things about it that, it just, actually it was nice, but there was not a lot of struggle in this book. Things happened for them very easily, and as a reader, it was a nice break from worrying about inflation and
or dystopia.
Politics for the most part. They succeed very early on, and then they don't have to worry about a lot of that stuff that I think the rest of us have to worry about.
Right, and Marx is there making sure they don't have to worry about anything right from the start.
Yeah.
That probably leaves more room, though, for that characterization that we love so much when you're not dealing with that kind of minutia, then we get like, I think we have more room in the story for the characters' other neuroses that aren't just, systematic.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Well, and I'm sure it was more fun to write without having to worry about all of that too, which, again, you feel how fun this was to write, I think.
For sure.
Yeah, I had a great time with it, and I don't think I have to ask the room if we would recommend it. I think we have all made that really clear. And in fact, I don't think I have to ask at least a couple of people in the room if it was their favorite book of the year, because a couple of people have already said it was. So yeah, but let's go ahead. We've got a little time left. Let's make some recommendations, some little end of the year recommendations here. Robin Beery, what do you have?
Well, like I said, this was the best. I did just finish Lydia Millett's book, Dinosaurs, that came out this year, which was very good. I did like her book from 2 years ago, The Children's Bible, better.
I love that book. Yeah. Yeah, thanks. Awesome. I'll have to look for that. Ashley, what do you think?
One of my favorite writers and just a brilliant essayist, Alexander Chee, edited the 2022 Best American Essays.
Oh.
And I read them every year. I have for several years. I mostly do not like them. It makes me feel really weird when I read them because I'm like, oh no, I don't like any of the good stuff. But this year I was blown away by every essay in the collection. And I think that like, if you're gonna get an essay collection this year, this is the one, because you'll love it.
Yeah, what a great recommendation. I haven't read that anthology in a number of years, but that's a great recommendation.
This year's good.
Yeah. Traci, what do you got?
Okay. You're going to already have probably had 6 people tell you to read this book, but I'm going to go ahead and throw in my voice. I read Jeanette McCurdy's I'm Glad My Mom Died.
Oh, wow.
And it's just amazing. She really, I think, shows a lot of restraint and compassion in how she portrays this incredibly abusive mother. It's a fascinating read.
Wow,
what a great recommendation. Yeah, I can't wait to read it.
Read that. I want to change mine. No, I'm just kidding. But read that. Oh my God, I love that book.
So I've been reflecting on my favorite books of the year, and this was right near the top of my list. And
Candy House.
The Candy House was really good.
We have to mention that.
Yeah, Candy House was great, and I really didn't want to love it as much as I did, but I really did love it. A lot of my favorite books of the year were actually catch-ups from 2021. I loved Dana Spiotta's Wayward. I loved Anthony Doerr's Cloud Cuckoo Land. Joshua Ferris's A Calling for Charlie Barnes they were in my top 10. I loved Jonathan Franzen's Crossroads. I just thought it was great, and that probably has something to do with the fact that I grew up, going to church in the Chicago area in the 70s. So I'm sure that played a lot into it. But I think the best time I had was Kate Atkinson, Shrines of Gaiety. I just loved it. I love Kate Atkinson, and I know a couple shows ago I recommended A God in Ruins. But wow, Shrines of Gaiety is so much fun. It's set in London, recovering from World War I. It's the Roaring 20s, and the 20s are definitely roaring. It's got a huge cast, and it's almost Dickensian. There's love and sex and murder and intrigue, and it's another novel that actually made Laura Miller's top 10 list. So she and I were especially simpatico this year, I think. It's not the greatest Kate Atkinson, but any Kate Atkinson is better than almost anything else, in my opinion. So, yeah, that was my favorite. So, yeah, that's it for us. You can find notes for this and all of our shows at the Radio Free Book Club blog on medium.com. You can also drop us a note on Facebook, stream the show wherever you listen to podcasts. Our show is produced by the one and only Oreo Jones for 99.1 WQRT LP in Indianapolis. For Traci Cumbay, Robin Beery, Ashley C. Ford, and all the members of Radio Free Book Club, I'm Ken Honeywell. Thanks for listening. And join us next month when we'll be discussing Blake Crouch's science fiction thriller Upgrade. Until then, read a book.